back. Talk how we talk sports talk, where sports sound like us. Today's episode is being presented to y'all by two Louisiana boys. I'm one of the hosts, David O, and I'm here today with my co-host slash producer.
D Broussard.
Yes, sir. We in the building. Y'all know how we get down, man.
Y'all know how we do it, baby.
Yep. So
Yeah,
we talking about some stuff tonight, bro. It's going down, bro.
it's going down.
Man,
Yeah.
second round in the playoffs, bro.
Second round, Dio.
Yeah, man. Semi-conference finals for the East and the West. That first round was amazing. We had some 3-1 comebacks. Like two of them. Pistons did it.
Yeah.
Man, who's the other team that did the three? 76ers did it. So yeah, man.
76ers.
Three. We got some 3-1 comebacks of some good games, man. So second round look like it's going to be interesting with the teams that's going to be competing against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to that. And
Absolutely.
before we jump into the show, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to our show. I want to encourage everybody to subscribe to the show and, definitely like and share and, jump in the comment section. We definitely try to be in the comment section with y'all. So, we appreciate everybody, man. But yeah, my boy D gonna take over. He gonna do his thing, and we gonna jump right into it.
Yeah. As we always do it, man, Dio. Um, we're gonna dive into our normal show segment. What you think? Now, what you think is where we give you guys a range of topics, and we give you guys our perspective on these topics. So we're gonna dive straight into it, not wasting no time. Playoffs has started, like my boy Dio said. Man, it's been crazy. A lot of comebacks, a lot of epic games. So first off, Thunder versus the Lakers. Dio, what you feel about Thunder versus the Lakers?
Man, I kind of like I like the matchup. I wasn't expecting it. My Rockets, they didn't do the comeback like I wanted them to do. But as you mentioned, LeBron, he did his thing in that series. He carried the Lakers even without, having Austin Reeves and without having Luca for the series. I know he got Austin Reeves back in that last game, so hopefully, with Reeves coming back, that gives him another playmaker and play scorer, to help him, just having took some of the load off of LeBron. But OKC, they got a very young team. They're a very fast team. They're very efficient. Championship team, playoff experience. So definitely can't take nothing away from the Thunder. But also, Lakers. LeBron. Been to the championships many times. Playoff pretty much every year he's been in the league. Good leader. I think he's gonna be able to, rally some of his teammates around his championship experience, his playoff experience. But overall, some of the key storylines that I'm looking forward to, and this one is gonna definitely SGA versus LeBron. With SGA, he being, a lead scorer, can give you 30 a night. LeBron, he can go into father time, like you like to say, or he like to, he can control the tempo as well. So I think, if SGA able to do what he usually do, I think it's going to be a very tough time for the Lakers. But at the same time, I think if LeBron can do what he do and also kind of control tempo, I think the Lakers might have a chance of winning this series as well. Um, you know, I think OKC has the better big over,
Mhm.
Aiton. I think Chet is a better big, more versatile. He can take you out of the paint. He can shoot.
Mhm.
He can kind of, space the floor a little bit. So I think that's
Mhm.
something that the Lakers gonna have to watch out for. With the big man down low, Aiton definitely gonna have to be on his A game in order to defend, and then also be able to get rebounds and things, and kind of limit some of those second chance point opportunities that the Thunder can take advantage of from time to time. But OKC, they like to do fast breaks, they like transition buckets, high possession games. And then the Lakers, they're kind of more of half court set, physical defense. Like I mentioned, kind of like to control the tempo a little bit. So I think whoever can control the tempo and whoever the tempo leads in, favor towards, I think that's going to be the determining factor of this particular series. I know Jalen Williams is, he was injured I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make a comeback for this series. So two of the star players for each team is going to be possibly missing this series, but they still have two star players as well, on each side. So I think that LeBron and SGA matchup is going to be something that we got to look forward to. But overall, just with the Thunder depth being younger, a younger team, being going for a repeat, I'm leaning towards the Thunder with winning this series. I do think it's going to be a close series, but I think it might be. I think Thunder maybe 4-2, or I think Thunder maybe you know maybe 4-3. So I think it might go to a game seven. It's going to probably go to game six, game seven overall. That's what I'm thinking.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I feel you. I feel the same way. I think that it's gonna be possibly maybe 6 games. It's hard for me to bet against LeBron. Although I feel like he's definitely gonna have to beat vintage LeBron in this series, just because it's the Thunder. The defending champs. They look great in the last series. They're well rested, and
Hmm.
so you're definitely gonna be looking at a fully rested Thunder team. They definitely gonna be aggressive. They definitely gonna be shooting as a from shooting a high percentage. And like I said, definitely gonna have to see vintage LeBron in this series. And also, like you said, no Luka Doncic. Although Austin Reeves is back, and I mean he's been playing really well, but no Luka Doncic. I think that really hurts the Lakers a whole lot going up against this team like the Thunder, who have a lot of depth, like you said, and you know they've looked really good in the playoffs. So, um, of course, the Thunder are the heavy favorite in this series, and ultimately, I think the Thunder most likely, I feel like they're gonna take the series. But like you said, I'm thinking it's not gonna be a sweep. I'm maybe 6 games. I think the Lakers maybe can get maybe 2 games out of this series, just because, like I said, it's hard for me to bet against LeBron. Just him being LeBron, knowing how to run different offensive sets, knowing how to defend. I'm pretty sure he's definitely watched a whole lot of film on this Thunder team and studied this Thunder team to see exactly how they play. And, he's kind of like a quarterback on the basketball court. He's going to have, his guys and the guys that's on the court with him. He's going to have them, setting up in the right spot so he can hit them and pass the ball out to them and stuff like that. And, you know, in this last series, I kind of like really the series you was actually talking about with the Rockets. I kind of actually noticed something about LeBron, and just I don't really like to talk about the man so much, but I'm just, as a basketball um fan and a person that likes basketball, I just noticed in that last series how um LeBron's basketball IQ is like impeccable. I was literally watching him against the Rockets, basically run the offense, set up the offense, tell the guys where to be. Like, he it's like he already knows how to dissect each defense in the NBA on the offensive end, and it's just amazing to see somebody that just has that type of basketball IQ, to where it's like, it's almost like sometimes you don't even need a coach. Like, it's like he's the coach on the basketball court. And like you said, and I gotta agree with that as well, it's just like you said, LeBron being able to control the tempo and control that momentum of the game. I just feel like I feel like they may get at least 2 games. But ultimately I think the Thunder probably pull this one off, man. I just, I gotta be honest. They just have the better team. No Luka Doncic. That's gonna really hurt the Lakers.
Yeah, and this season I was looking at a stat too. Like the Thunder won every game in the regular season against the Lakers. It was
Hmm.
4-0. They met 4 times, and every time the Thunder beat them. So if history repeats itself, then it's kind of leaning in the Thunder favor. But
Hmm.
at the same time, it wasn't like blowout wins. It was close games. So, but just a stat to throw out there that they did sweep the regular season series 4-0
Mhm.
versus the Lakers. So maybe LeBron and the Lakers and company can use that as some fuel, some fire. Playoffs is different. Like I say, it's always gonna go. You never know what you're gonna get in the playoffs. This is where you gotta earn your contract.
Mhm.
For people who's gonna be trying to increase their value next season, this is the time to show up. So hopefully that the Lakers can definitely, like you say, get at least 2 games. I think they should do well at home because another thing I was noticing is that in the first round, a lot of the home teams was winning the home games. You had teams that did win on the road, when they needed to, but a lot of the teams they was winning at home, so they should be able to get those games in LA. And if they can still win in OKC, they can push it to a game 7. So like I said, I think it's gonna be 6, 7 game series, but again, it's gonna I think the Thunder just gonna SGA, man, he just
True.
he can't be stopped for
Can't
some
be
reason.
stopped, man. He's so good, man. He
I watched
good.
him play, bro. Like I really watched
Yeah.
this dude play when they played the Houston Rockets. I went
Yeah.
to the game and, bro, like it's like the dude moves slow. It's like when I was watching him, it was like slow mo. It's like it was nothing really fancy about his game that I seen,
Mhm.
but it's like it goes in, and
Mhm.
it's like it moves so slow. It's like when people try to defend them, it's like they're not defending them, and it's just like it's like they're moving away from him or just I don't know something about it. It's just like it was just
Yeah.
weird to me when I
It's
was
weird
watching.
to see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, how is they letting this dude do this? I'm like, because when I see him in live action, I'm like, man, this dude really not that good. But
Mhm.
stats show otherwise. So
Yeah.
he do get the points, but I don't think he's all of that, to be honest with
Right.
you. Just from
Well,
seeing him in person.
I I think that being that he's on the type of team that he's on, like as far as the depth, and I mean you got to commend Sam Presti for putting together this OKC team with the depth and the talent that they have. It's almost like he really don't have to really do much. It's like he's almost like the secret weapon. Like I've
Hmm.
seen OKC games where like dude literally set out like probably like I'll say most of the second half, and the coach put him in like a couple minutes left in the fourth quarter, and he just go in and close the game. Like it's been games like that. So I just feel like with this team they have, man, it's like he really don't have to do much because it's just so much. I mean, they can do everything. Like everybody, I feel like from 1 to 10, or I'll even say from 1 to 12. Like everybody that step on the floor, they're gonna play well. Like they
Yeah.
know their roles, they know what to do. Like they don't really make many mistakes. Like they are a complete basketball team. Like if I had to think of a complete basketball team, I would say the OKC Thunder is like a complete basketball team. Like they all know their roles. Nobody trying to
Hmm.
be the star over the other. Like it's
Hmm.
like, look, this we coming to win, and that's it. We ain't trying to be no stars or nothing. We coming to take care of business, and we out of here.
Yeah, like you said, they're a complete team, but also, man, I was looking at just like the roster the other day, and it's young, man. Like they very young, man. I'm
Very
looking
young,
at some of these guys, bro, and I'm like, man, I got 10 years on these dudes. I'm like, these dudes 25, 26, 27 years old, and I'm like, man, they're a young team, and
very young.
two of the guys that I was reviewing, I forgot their names. I was just kind of looking through their Wikipedias and stuff. But two of the guys both came from Fort Smith, Arkansas. So I kind of noticed that, like, when I guess in their recruiting process, they kind of recruiting in the same area almost when they looking for those players that they're bringing in through the draft. I noticed
Hmm.
that they was in the South with
Hmm.
some of the players that they was drafting and stuff. But again, they just a very young team, and like you say, they're not having that superstar mentality. Like I want to be the leader, I want to be the go-to guy. They playing all around, and that's working in
Hmm.
their favor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I feel I kind of know what you're saying about SGA, like seeing him live, cause Um, I had the opportunity to watch LeBron live twice, and it felt the same way. It almost felt like he wasn't really doing nothing. And then when I looked up at the scoreboard or the stats, he had like 40 points, and I was like, 40 points. I was like, man, he looked like he really did nothing, and he
Mm,
had 40 points, and it was just like, so I don't know, man. I guess these guys, man, that's why it's the NBA. You know, they just super talented, man. So, but yeah, I think the Thunder gonna take it though. Next up, the Wolves versus the Spurs. I feel like this one right here is definitely gonna be. This gonna be a dog fight. I'm gonna be honest. This is gonna be a battle. I feel like this the best series I would say in the Western Conference right now. What you think about the Wolves versus the Spurs, deal?
yeah, man. I like the matchup because both got a big. You got a defensive player of the year big. You got Wimbyama, however you pronounce his name. He was kind of in the running for MVP, throughout
Mm-hmm.
the season. So, and he's such a versatile player, man. He can get you in the paint. He can take you out the paint. I mean, Rudy
Mm-hmm.
Gobert is definitely gonna have his hands full with the guy, because if they get Rudy away from that block and that paint, that kind of gives away their rim protection. With Victor, being able to space the floor like he can, but I'm definitely looking forward to the matchup because like the Wolves, they already got one game on them. I wasn't expecting for the Wolves to get game one, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the Spurs was gonna come out, and take game one, but the Wolves was able to, get Anthony Edwards back. He came off the bench, he scored like 18 points, and I think the Wolves really got a, good team. They're with all of the vets they got on there, with Julius Randle. I know we talk about him all the
Mm-hmm.
time, with Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, with some of the other guys that's on that as veterans. So they got a good veteran team. Spurs is kind of more of a younger team. But I think that, Minnesota Timberwolves, they've been battle tested because I didn't even realize this until I actually heard it somewhere else. It was that for the last 2 years, they made it to the Western Conference Finals. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even noticed that, so I'm like, really? I'm like, man, they made it. So, and this year, they're back in the running again. They was able to knock off the Denver Nuggets, even without Anthony Edwards, what I'm saying, in that
Mm-hmm.
last game. So, that just goes to show you how they're battle tested, how they have a lot of grit with them, and they're a defensive team. So I think if they can continue to lean on that, I think that's going to definitely work out in their favor. Being that this particular Spurs team, this is their first year, up and coming, haven't really been battle tested yet. But what I like about the Spurs is that, they've won games against the defending champions, who we just finished talking about was the OKC Thunder, and how we was just talking about how they were more of a complete overall team. So that just goes to show you that, being that the Spurs are a younger team, just like the OKC Thunder, they are able to compete with the best of them and even win against the best of them. Especially with, with Victor being out there, I think it's going to be a great matchup. um, but some of the key storylines that I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward to seeing what Victor be able to do. I'm looking forward to see what Anthony Edwards be able to do. He's an explosive scorer. He built for big playoff moments. He can take over games late. So I think if we can see Anthony Edwards that we know, I think that's gonna lean in the Wolves' favor because the Spurs really don't have a Anthony Edwards type player. I don't think, what can take over like that and, that explosive. So that's, two of the key matches I'm looking to see what Victor do, and then what, Anthony Edwards can do as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree.
I
I
do feel like the Wolves defense is really key. I feel like the Wolves have been really good defensively all playoff long, and I feel like that's the key for the Wolves is their defense against this Spurs team. And I feel like, even though we talked a lot about the Spurs, we talked about how they beat OKC during the season, and they were the sleeper team, and you know episodes back. But I feel like my question mark for the Spurs has always been the youth and inexperience of the team. I feel like you said earlier, the Wolves have already been there. They've been in big game situations. They've been to the Western Conference Finals. This Spurs team, they're still relatively young and inexperienced when it comes to playoffs. So I feel like that's gonna be the difference maker. Can these young guys step up to the plate to win a series like this and make it to the Western Conference Finals? Obviously, like you said, Victor Wembanyama, he's a key part of the team, and I just feel like, this guy, in my opinion, I feel like he might be the best center that I've ever seen play the game of basketball. Like I've never seen a guy 7'5" run the floor like a guard, can pull up and shoot threes, can take you off the dribble, can play you in the post. Like, I mean, his game is like it's phenomenal. I'm gonna be honest, it's phenomenal. And he's another guy I had the opportunity to watch in person. But at that time he was this was his rookie season, so he wasn't really that polished just yet. But I've been able to watch him, grow and get better uh in his career. But like I said, I think, the youth inexperience is gonna be a huge key factor for this series because, like I said, these guys are still young, and I just don't know if they ready to take the next step just yet. So that's always been a question mark for me with the Spurs in the playoffs. It's like you said earlier, the regular season is the regular season. Once the playoffs start, everybody is 0-0, and the intensity of the game is a lot more uh
Yeah.
it's a lot more intense, in the playoffs than it is in the regular season as well. So I just that's my thing with the Spurs. But like you say, Anthony Edwards returning, coming off a hyperextended knee. He came back pretty quick, in my opinion. I really didn't expect
Mhm.
him to come back that fast, especially from a hyperextension. But he came back and he played, and I feel like he's the difference maker. As long as he's on the court, even if he's not 100%, but as long as he's on the court, whether he's defending, rebounding, taking shots, I feel like the Wolves have a chance with Anthony Edwards on the court, and I think that's why he ended up coming back because he knows how much of a difference he's gonna make on the team for them to get to where they're trying to go, and ultimately possibly compete for a championship. So that's how I feel about this Wolves versus Spurs series. But I do feel like it's gonna be a dog fight. It's hard for me to really say right now who gonna win the series because I just don't know. It's just
Yeah.
that good of a series. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's definitely gonna go to game seven. I
I
think it's
think so.
gonna go to game
I
seven
agree.
with this one. Um, you know, I wanna go with the Wolves, but at the same time, I just I don't know, something telling me just go with the Spurs just because, with all of the things that Victor can do, he can stay healthy as well. Then I think that gives them an advantage just because, like I mentioned earlier, he can pull Rudy Gobert away from that paint, and
Hmm.
stretch out the floor, and then that gives the opportunity to some of the other guys on the Spurs to go ahead and score as well. And they got a pretty good offense as well, a good offensive system that they
True.
run over there with the younger guys. So I think that's Anthony Edwards is a key factor for the Wolves, but I think Victor is just as much as a key factor for the Spurs. If he can keep Rudy Gobert out of that paint. So I
True.
definitely would like to see what kind of adjustments that the Timberwolves is gonna make, to accommodate for Victor's overall game. I'm
Hmm.
interested to
Hmm.
see what kind of game plan they're gonna come up with that.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. Definitely gonna be a good series, man, and I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, Wolves took game one, and I wasn't even expecting that myself. But they were able to steal game one, and I think it's like you said. I think it's gonna probably go 7 games. I would love to see it go 7 games, and
Mm-hmm.
let the best team win. That's what I feel. Let them go 7 games, and let the best team win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next up, Knicks versus I'm about to say Spurs. Knicks versus the 76ers. This was a game last night. I mean, this was this was a blowout to me, but
Yeah.
You know, what you think about the Knicks versus 76ers series?
Yeah, man. Like you said, the game last night was kind of a continuation of what they did against the Hawks.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
just went into that game with lots of momentum. New York, as we know, they're a good, solid team. When they
Mhm.
when they clicking on all cylinders, great team. Jalen Brunson, Carl Anthony Towns, Bridges, OG. What I mean, Josh Hart. You know what I'm saying? So very, good all around team as well. Maybe one of the strongest teams in the East, to be honest with you. They lean on their defense, they lean on, relentless effort as well. But the 76ers, I think the 76ers have a good chance, with, as we mentioned in the other series with Joel Embiid being that kind of, you know, difference maker in that
Mhm.
Boston Celtics series just because Joel Embiid, he can get to the foul line at will whenever he wants to. He can space the floor. He can shoot the three.
Mhm.
Sometimes you'll see I used to see him running the point position sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So just an overall, good player when he's healthy as well. But I think this is gonna be blue collar, versus elite, star power because I think the 76ers have more of the bigger names, right? You got Joel
Mhm.
Embiid, you got Paul George, you got Tyrese Maxey. I think they got, some of the better offensive scoring when New York kind of lean more on Brunson. So I think
Mhm.
if you can kind of take Brunson out of the
Mhm.
equation, then, who was that second scorer for New York, right?
That's a good point.
Because Josh
Mhm.
Hart, he ain't gonna give you no 30, 40 a game. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Bridges, he can go off. I seen him go
Mhm.
off before, so Bridges can go off. Carl Nick Downs, he used to go off in Minnesota, but none of those guys I don't feel can really do what Brunson do, and I think they just lean on Brunson a little too much. So I think
Mhm.
if you can take him out of the equation, whether you trapping him or just making it harder for him, I think that'll be the 76ers, key to victory. And if Joel Embiid can stay hot, if Paul George can be playoff P, and so I think this should be a good matchup too. But man, what I heard that what they're doing, I heard that New York is trying to keep like they're not trying to like let the 76ers fans or the 76ers is not trying to yeah, that's how it was. 76ers is trying to keep like New York out of the building. You know what I'm saying? Because I
Mhm.
was listening to another show and it was saying how like how basically the 76ers came out saying how they needed the fans to, kind of show up and show out for them just because of, what happened in the last game, how they had took that L. It was kind of, leaning on the fans to come out and show their support. And I heard that like they're trying not to even sell tickets to people if you like from New York, like because how sometimes season ticket holders they'll like sell their seat or whatever to
Mhm.
be able to I guess make money on it or whatever. But it was a rumor going around saying that they trying to keep as many New York fans out of Philly as possible to try to help the 76ers have I guess a home court advantage. So but with New York, they team and they fans, they gonna always show up. They showed up
Mhm.
in the Atlanta Hawks series. You know what I'm saying? And with Philadelphia being so close to New York, I don't think that's gonna stop them from, going out to those games and, trying to make an impact in that. So I definitely wanna see, this series as well. But I'm gonna have to go with if I had to pick one, it's kind of hard to pick, man. I ain't gonna lie, but I've been hot on the Knicks all year. I've been a supporter of the Knicks all year, so I'm gonna go towards the Knicks. I think the Knicks gonna take this
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of things that you said. I feel like that's also something that we spoke about in the last episode as well, talking about you know, if you're able to kind of take one player out of the equation, that makes that team a different team. Who's going to be the guy to step up and make shots when, the 76ers defense maybe close in on Jalen Brunson a little bit more because I agree with you on that. I think they have overused Jalen Brunson a lot. And I mean, obviously, the dude is great. He's a great scorer. he can put up numbers, but a lot of times, especially in the playoffs, it's all about the X factor. Like who's gonna be the X factor? Who's gonna be that guy when Jalen Brunson is going, I don't know, 10 for 35, and he's not really having a great game. Who's gonna be that guy that's gonna be able to carry the Knicks to victory? Is it gonna be Carl Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, Bridges, OG? Who's that guy? Because, obviously Jalen Brunson is not going to be able to play the same way he did in the first game, every game throughout the series. Guys do have off nights. So, you know, I'm just thinking in my head, like, I don't know who's going to be that guy. But I can't say that the last game, the Sixers were coming off of that game seven, a tough game seven at that against the Boston Celtics. So, I felt like the Sixers didn't really have much time to prep and prepare for this game, as far as game one. And the Knicks, they just looked really dominant. They were well rested. So of course, they're gonna come out with a lot more energy. So
Mm-hmm.
I think uh that kind of catered to the results of the game last night. And I feel like the Knicks consistency is key. Like they gonna have to be consistent throughout this series because I feel like the 76ers are gonna make adjustments after this first game because obviously, they're gonna get a little time to rest. So they're gonna definitely watch film, make adjustments. And I feel like something that a lot of people forget about the 76ers is that their head coach, Nick Nurse, has won a championship before. So this is a championship coach that's coaching the 76ers. He won a championship with the Toronto Raptors. So, this guy's a championship coach. He's definitely going to make adjustments. He's definitely going to prep his team to play against the New York Knicks. And, we talked a lot about Mike Brown. Mike Brown hasn't won a championship, so I feel like it's gonna be. It's been pressure on Mike Brown. I feel like the whole playoffs, to be honest. So it's definitely gonna be pressure on Mike Brown. Can he get it done and close out this team and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals? But ultimately, I'm like you. I'm with you. I've been rocking with the Knicks last season. As I said before, I had the Knicks going to the NBA Finals. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I do feel like the Knicks are going to take this series and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Just because I just feel like the Knicks just have the more complete team,
Mm-hmm.
the more depth, guys that can score from, I would say, 1 to 10, as far as in the rotation. And everything is really gonna be on Mike Brown. Can he get his guys together and control this series and, play the right guys and match up well and things of that nature. So but ultimately I think I gotta go with the Knicks in this series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's gonna probably be 4-2, 4-2 Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's gonna
Yeah,
go to game seven. I think it's probably gonna be done in about six.
yeah, yeah. Next up, Pistons versus the Cavaliers. Now, Pistons coming off that big game seven win against the Orlando Magic. I think the Cavaliers were also in a game seven as well
Mm-hmm.
against the Toronto Raptors. So two teams coming off a game seven. What you think about the Detroit Pistons going up against the Cavaliers, Dio?
Well, I think the Pistons, they showed everybody that even through adversity they can come back, and they showed everybody why were the number one seed. When a lot of people, like media and stuff was talking about them and saying they questioning Detroit, they don't think Detroit really got it in them. They showed everybody that they got it in them, right? They came back from they was 3-1 Orlando, and they came back and they ended up winning. And even in game one tonight, I just looked at the score. They beat the Cavs tonight. The score
Mm-hmm.
was 111 to 101. So Pistons is up 1-0 in this series. But I think some of the key storylines of this playoff matchup is going to be the guard battle.
Mm-hmm.
Cade Cunningham versus Donovan Mitchell. Cade Cunningham being a big guard. He controls the pace. He can score. He can facilitate. You know what I'm saying? Now Donovan Mitchell, he's also an elite scorer as well. He can put up the points, and he can tick over late as well. So, but as we talked about before, he just always seems to not show up in the playoff moments. And I think that hasn't been an issue for Kate Cunningham. He's always showed up, and even coming back from being out with the injury that he had, he came back and he was able to still lead his team to victory overall. But um, I think that's gonna be a deciding factor how the guard play, on both teams. And but Cavs do got some rim protection, with Allen, Detroit they got they got their big man too as well. So I think the front court and the back court is going to be some good matchups to watch in this particular series. On both sides of the ball. But at the end of the day, I just with Harden coming over there so late in the series,
Mm,
during the trade deadline, I just don't think that the Cavs have the chemistry that the Detroit Pistons have.
mm,
Pistons, they've been there. They stuck with their team the whole year. They've been with their team the whole year. So I think they have that chemistry, and I think they have a true leader in Cade Cunningham, and I think that's going to be the advantage that gives the Pistons the advantage over the Cleveland Cavaliers.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree with you. I think this series to me is definitely gonna be experience versus inexperience. I can say about the Detroit Pistons is that they don't have, they are still inexperienced, very young team. I do like Cade Cunningham, and I like the way he's been playing, coming back, like you said, from that collapse lung. And I think, like I said, it's gonna be inexperience versus experience. And I feel like the Cleveland Cavaliers, they have some experienced players, guys that's been there before. Of course, like you mentioned, James Harden, Donovan Mitchell. They have those guys. Mobley, Evan Mobley,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not Josh Allen,
Jerry
Jared Allen. Yeah,
Allen.
Jared Allen. So they had Max Strus. These guys all been in big games, big moments. So I feel like they definitely have the experience. Dennis Schroeder is there as well, so they have the experience on that end. But is it going to be enough to beat this Detroit Pistons team? Because this team has played well all season long. They played well in the playoffs, like you said, coming back from a 3-1 deficit against the Orlando Magic. So I feel like, you know, I do feel like the Pistons do have a great chance to get it done. And that's gonna be the big question for me. Do the Pistons really have enough? Do they have enough to finish this series out and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals? And once again, we back at it this again. Donovan Mitchell, James Harden. Do they have what it takes to close out? In the playoffs. And lately, it hasn't really been looking that way. It hasn't been. It's still a lot of pressure on this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Can they finish? Can they get it done?
Mm-hmm.
Because James Harden, like you said in the last episode, he been on, I don't know, 6, 7 teams, in the last couple years, and it's always been, he's not the problem, the team is the problem, and now he's actually on a team and a roster that has some talent around it with Donovan Mitchell. So I feel like this is definitely a time for him to prove that he can get it done. Donovan Mitchell as well, hasn't been able to close out series and things of that nature. So I feel like the pressure is still on the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. Even though they're going up against, a really good team, the number 1 seed at that, in the Detroit Pistons, I still feel like that pressure is still on the Cleveland Cavaliers to get the job done. Like they have to get the job done.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I agree with you on that experience, take as well, because as you mentioned, Harden, he didn't been there, Donovan Mitchell, he didn't been there. And, this Pistons team, they are still young. And I think that, with all of the guys that you mentioned from Mobley to Allen, I think they got a advantage when it comes to defense as well.
Hmm.
So, but I think that some of the key factors and the X factors to this is going to be If it's a fast-paced game, I think that leans in Detroit's favor.
Mhm.
But if it's a slower paced game, I think that leads more into the Cavs' favor.
Mm.
At the end of the day, I don't know who's gonna win this one, man. I can't say if it's gonna
Yeah,
be
it's tough.
4 or 5 or 6 or what the case may
Mhm.
be. It's kind of making me, a little nervous that Detroit took game one. So I wasn't
Mhm.
expecting for Detroit to take game one just after that coming back from that series they just had. I didn't think
Mm.
they were gonna come out ready to win. I thought they was just gonna be maybe a little tired,
Yeah, that's a
just
good point.
but they came out and they won. They won by 10 points. I'm not sure. Let me see. I don't know if it was at home or not, but let me see if it was at home. They were the number one seed, so they maybe had the home court advantage. But let me double check. Don't don't even worry about it. But anyway, they won game one, so
Mhm.
I think that gives them the advantage already because now
Mhm.
they only got to win three, and Cleveland got to win four. You know,
Mhm.
so I think that gives Detroit the advantage over the Cavaliers. Man, as much as I would like Harden to win one,
Mhm.
I just don't think it's his year.
Uh, yeah.
Everything in my gut is telling me it's not going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, I agree.
They might win this series, but something in my gut just telling me it's not going to be. It's not their year. It's not their season. Even though
Mhm.
they built for it,
Mhm.
with all of the guys that they got around Mitchell and Harden, I just don't think they're going to be able to pull it off for some reason. I think if any two teams that I would have to lean on coming out of the East is going to be either Detroit or New York.
I agree. I agree. And yeah, I mean, the more and more that been watching the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoffs, I just feel like, man, as much as I hate to say it, but I just feel like uh the 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 great days of James Harden is starting to come to an end. I just feel like James is just not the same player that he used to be on the offensive side. And it really showed a lot in this game, this game here as well, this first game. James, to me, he didn't really play well. He didn't really look like, the James Harden that we uh been seeing over the years. And I just really feel like at this point in James Harden's career, I feel like he's kind of starting to slow down a little bit. I just don't feel like he's as an elite scorer as he used to be. When you think about those Houston days, like you talked about, in one of the last episodes about how elite he was in Houston, and he just, he was dominating and 40 points a night, and I just feel like that James Harden is just not there anymore. And I felt like Cleveland, they made a good move by bringing Harden in because one thing I can say about James Harden is his basketball IQ is definitely exceptional. But I just feel like from the scoring, I just feel like he's not that guy anymore. And Donovan Mitchell, like I said, I mean he's a great player. It's just he has to figure it out. Like he has to figure out how do I need to play in the playoffs to be able to get over the hump. And I'm like you, I agree with what you just said. I just don't think that this is their year. They just I don't know. They just still look like they missing something, but it's crazy because they actually have a lot of talent, but it just still look like something's not right. Like they're not like maybe it might be what you said earlier. Them making the trade for Harden at the trade deadline and the chemistry not really being there, that might be a huge difference maker. But I just feel like watching them is just they still don't seem like they're really clicking like they supposed to be. And even in the last episode that we talked about was, how the Raptors took them to 7 games. I felt like that was a red flag because, Cleveland with the talent they have and experience, I felt like they were supposed to dominate the Raptors. It was supposed to either be 4-1 or a
Yeah.
sweep, you know, because the Raptors were down Brandon Ingram and Emmanuel Quickney. They both didn't play. That was like two of the Raptors' main guys, and they didn't even play, and they still
Mhm.
took them to 7 games. So it's like that was a red flag for me as far as the Cavaliers and how they've been competing in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the points for tonight. Mobley had 14, Donovan Mitchell had 23, James Harden had 22, Strauss had 19, and then you had some role players with some other players with some points. But then when you look at Detroit, Cunningham had 23, Jenkins had 12, Robinson had 19, Tobias Harris put up 20. You know, I
Mm,
think I think with Tobias Harris, being the pretty much the second option for Detroit, just kind of looking at the roster, I don't see, on Durham he had Duran, he had 11.
mm-hmm,
So I mean, I think both teams had overall well balanced, with their scoring,
mm,
but at the same time, it's like they did win by 10 points, but I just think that I don't know why Cleveland didn't take this game because when I'm looking at the roster and
right.
I'm like, man,
They
I know more
stacked.
I know more people on the Cleveland team than on the Pistons team,
Exactly.
and it's like I don't see I I don't see how they didn't take the game, to be honest with you, because I was listening to a talk show this morning on the radio, and it was basically saying, kind of how Kate Cunningham is like, they how they lean on him a lot, and it was like they really didn't have a true second scorer as
Mm-hmm.
well.
That's
Um,
true.
so, and with Cavaliers having two scorers,
Exactly.
you would think that they would have
Right.
took the game, but when I'm looking at the point comparison, it was close in points wise between key players and you know role players, and it's just like that just goes to show you, anything can happen in the playoffs, and maybe they use this as some fuel again.
Mm-hmm.
Cavaliers come back. I think I think they're gonna go up. They're gonna tie the series next game. I think it'll be 1-1,
Mm-hmm.
but I just still don't think that they're gonna win it all. Even if they win this
Mm-hmm.
series, I don't think they're gonna win it all. I think when
I
they get to
agree.
that finals, whoever they play in the finals, whether that be the Knicks or
Mm-hmm.
whether that be the 76ers. If the 76ers can pull it off, I think they're gonna have a tough time with either of those teams because
Mm-hmm.
both of those teams, got I think both of those teams is just as strong or better than Detroit. Paper wise, when you look at the roster on paper,
Mm-hmm.
you would lean more towards the 76ers or the Knicks when you're just looking at it on paper. But I don't think the Cavaliers is gonna pull it off this year, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I agree, man. Like it's just like you said, the talent and everything is there, and they just not playing at a high level, man. They not really playing, like uh they're to be feared in the playoffs. Like
yeah,
it's just, you know, I
yeah.
don't know.
You said it. You said it right. They're not to be feared. Like
Yeah.
like nobody. I don't think no team would be scared to play them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think people are most scared to play the Pistons or the Knicks. I think more people scared
Mm-hmm.
to play one of those teams than to play the Cavs.
I
So
agree. I agree.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's all I
Yeah.
got tonight, man. We definitely gonna keep y'all. Matter of fact, before we get out of here, Thunder currently leading 65-55. Right now it's the third quarter, 10 minutes left. So I'm gonna go ahead and watch that game and see how this turn out. You know, see if LeBron can make a comeback in the second half, or but right now they got a 10-point advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to thank everybody, man, for watching the show tonight, tuning in, talk how we talk sports talk. Y'all know how we do. Y'all know where we be. Y'all know how to find us. Definitely look us up on YouTube. My boy D got us on Apple podcast. He got us on Spotify. Anywhere y'all can listen or watch the show at, he got us on there. So y'all definitely tune in. We appreciate everybody. And we gonna holler at y'all. D, you got anything else for the
Nah,
conclusion?
man, that's it, man. Just make sure y'all like and subscribe to the channel. Shout out to everybody that's already subscribed, man. We really appreciate y'all seeing that we got a good bit of new subscribers this week, man. So yeah, man, we appreciate everybody for subscribing to the channel and make sure y'all turn them notifications on.
Yep.
And as long as y'all keep subscribing, man, we're gonna keep on bringing y'all this content, man. Y'all know how we do this, man. Talk how we talk.
Talk how we talk, man. We out.
We out.